and we're going to go really into this a lot, is communication. Oftentimes that's a thing that's, and I'll use this quote. I love this. I kind of just came up with this and thought, I don't know why I was thinking about this segment. And, as it came up, remembering, old Jack Nicholson when he's on the stand in A Few Good Men. And no, it's not where he says he can't handle the truth. He says, we use words like honor, code, loyalty. We use these words as the backbone of life spent defending something. You use it as a punchline. And I love that because I kind of just all of a sudden I thought about that because communication is such a punchline, right? It's just, we just throw it around. Lenders just throw it around. I'm great at communication. Or the realtor says, I just need somebody to really communicate. And that's where it lies. And it's just this kind of like Jack Nicholson said, it's just, you use it as a punchline. And what he was saying in that is like, we embody this. We are holding that line. We are securing this border. We are defending this country, right? And he was just so steadfast and just staunch in the fact that he knew like he was doing things that were protecting the country. And he had a pure disdain to somebody just kind of just flippantly going, yeah, well, we do those things too. And he had such disdain because he had such pride in how the fact that he honored that code, right? And I think about that in communication because again, we just throw communication around like, oh, man, you're a great communicator. And we think like, and so it just always amazes me, right? Because I've talked to loan officers, I've talked to real estate agents that say they're good at communicating and they're not. And I think it's one of those things where, again, they're very unaware. And I've been unaware sometimes, right? We all been, had this. But you please do not throw communication around like it's just this little thing. Like it's just like we can flippantly kind of throw it around and go like, I'm a great communicator. But like we're not steadfast in the fact that we're just continually working on communication, high level communication. And I love this quote, Dallas Hardcastle, my partner in crime, communication is incumbent on the communicator. Oftentimes communication goes off, or we've said, oh man, I've told him that 5 times. And we're blaming the other person for the communication breaking down. Like it's very easy because we've kind of told them that 2 different times. And I myself, like I've done this before. Like I was, so I'm always studying this myself and trying to be hyper aware and how I come across. And so like, I remember this was months back and I had this communication with someone. It was outside the industry. We're, talking about, actually doing, getting some sport coats get put together and come to my house and fittings and all that stuff. And she had messaged me and I was like, man, I already told her like, it was going to be the Friday after. And then I went back, I was like, man, what the heck? So I went back into my text and I was like, that was very unclear. Like that was my fault. Like that was not her fault. That was my fault. That was bad communication. It did not clearly have that definitive time frame. It didn't spell it out like it should have. So that communication and the miscommunication was incumbent on me to get it right. And so she did her job. And oftentimes we don't look at that. We just say, oh man, I told them 5 times. I told my kids 5 times. Well, maybe you need to, reward it differently. Maybe you need to communicate in a different way. Maybe you need to see what their communication style is. We do that with borrowers all the time, right? Clients like, oh man, I told them that, have you really told them why it's important? Have you went into that? Have you maybe, they didn't get it the first time, you kind of tell a story to really illustrate why that's important to them and how that can be communicated differently? How are they communicating in a style that's very detail oriented? Or are they a person that is just bottom line and sometimes they miss the details and you're trying to throw so many details in there that maybe that wasn't a good communication style for them? See, communication is not just saying, okay, I told them this. It is meeting people where they're at. And so we cannot just say, okay, they didn't get it. They're not a fit for us, or that's a borrower's fault, or man, that agent's stupid, or whatever we're saying. We have to have it's incumbent upon us, the communicator, the one putting out communication, that we're understood. We're fully understood. They get it. We're on the same page. We can't, if everybody just thinks it's the other person's fault, nobody gets better. We don't get better as lenders. We don't get better as serving the clients. We don't get better as serving our agents and our relationships. And guess what? We carry that through. If we continue to go, hey, that broke down in communication, where was it that I broke, I maybe wasn't clear enough, or I didn't communicate the way that they like to be communicated with, And so on my team, we've went over all the time with the archetypes, like what archetype are they? Like we have in Genius Loan Officer. Are they, are they a molder, someone that's kind of skeptical and they want to know all these details, or they, someone that's just an activator that just wants those bottom line? Are you communicating how they're communicating? You can read it through text, like they're texting and they're, they have, just very bottom line oriented, and you throw out, 28 lines of detail. Well, guess what? You're like, well, I told them that. Well, they probably just phased out because they're like, man, I've got to go. I've got to do this. And maybe we could have did a couple lines, space, a couple lines, space, a couple lines. That way they can register it really quickly and they can decipher what they need to know and they can move forward. This is high level communication we have to work on. If you're like, well, man, I don't know how to do all that. We teach that. But again, this has got to be through this great intent to first say, hey, it's up to me. And then once you start doing that, you'll start figuring out ways, even if you're not even trained, you'll start figuring out ways to better communicate. If you just have the premise right now, it's incumbent upon me, then you will start having a better premise. And you stop using it as just a punchline because, man, like I guarantee you've heard it. I'm great, communication, and then they're not good communicator. You've had real estate agents, man, I want a good communicator, and then they literally won't communicate, right? during a conversation or during a deal, right? You can't even get a hold of them. Like you're trying to get a one piece of paper on them, they won't, right? And so we get that there's just this punchline, right? We can't have it a punchline. We have to embody what it means to be a great communicator. And a few points there I want to kind of go through on communication is the most important communication is, we always have to know this, is with ourselves. Communication with ourselves is at paramount stakes, because when we speak to ourselves in a great way, in a proper way, in a powerful way, in an empowering way, and we're selling ourselves constantly. We should be selling ourselves constantly, like we're the biggest prospect. And our team, we should be helping our team do the same. If we have a team, if they're doing that, if they're being empowered, if you're teaching them to, whenever there's communication breakdowns within themselves where they're belittling themselves, they're doing something that is taken away from them, the person, that is communication with themselves that can also bleed into other interactions. It's like gratitude, right? Gratitude is a huge thing I'm huge on, because once we start looking for the bad and we're not have this good gratitude, is that when that client is being a little difficult, we think the gratitude's not there. And now we feel like we're too good. We feel like we shouldn't have to put up with this. The gratitude spirit says, hey man, this is a great client. I know that there's some difficulties. There's got to be something that's going on in our life. How can we better communicate? How can we better serve them? How can we just be a difference maker in their lives? And it will allow us to speak differently to them. If we're speaking differently to ourselves, that will allow us to speak to people in a way that is communication magic, right? It just pops. It has fervor to it. It has feeling behind it. It has real authenticity to it that is bright, shiny, and helps people move their mood from one level to a whole different level. And I tell you what, that is completely different communication. That's influential communication, and that wins you relationships, wins you deals, it wins in life. Okay, intent is key. Number two, really, intent is key. Like the most successful, like if you could break it down almost and everything, I tell you, the successful people, the successful loan officers, successful people in business that I've ever studied, they just have an intentionality that is different than others. They're very intentional about everything they do. They're intentional the way they communicate. They're intentional the way they show up. They're intentional on their schedule. They're intentional who they hire. They're intentional who their relationship with. They're intentional with all their marketing. They're intentional all the time. If you want to be successful, you have got to be intentional about everything that you do. You cannot just wing it. You know, the ones that just like, oh, well, you know, I just kind of like, yeah, stuff just kind of flows to me, or I just let my day kind of happen, and or you know, that's what's worked for me, or oh, I don't really set goals. It just, you know, I just kind of do my things. Like, okay, great. Like you are really holding yourself back because you're not intentional about what you're doing in a day. You're not intentional about how you're serving people. You're not intentional in your communication. You have to be intentional in your communication. You have to look at like, how can I be intentional with helping them be better, intentional about helping them feel better about this transaction. How do I intentional about being laser focused on keeping them on track? How am I intentional? Intentionality is key. Number three, empathy is a pathway to the heart. Number three is empathy is a pathway to the heart. I tell you what, you want to get into people's hearts, into people's lives, into people's, gracious spirits. You got to have empathy. It doesn't mean you sulk and you go down with them and they have something, but be empathetic. A great communicator is empathetic. Even if you are a very positive person, which I'm a positive person, and somebody is going into negative, I can't just go, hey, oh, well, just look at the great news. We all are drug addicts. All are drug addicts. We need shots of the drug that really drives us forward. And some people, for example, need that shot of drug of pity, right? Like they're showing their pity need, and you're just like going, man, well, guess what? They say something like, oh man, the drive's going to be long. Well, guess what, man? You get to listen to podcasts and everything else and all that stuff. And you're just trying to, and I know it's something that you want to be good to them, and you want to lift their spirits, which is some intentionality. But if you go deeper level of intentionality of like, what do they need in this moment? What do they need? Not what do I need? What is going to help them? And guess what? Just like a drug addict needs. This is a real thing. Just like a drug addict needs. What they do, they go, and when they detox, they have to give them some little more drugs so they don't like flatline, right? We have to give them a little shot of drug of going and empathizing with, for example, their long drive. You can intentionally try to bring them out of that over time. Doesn't mean you're sulking, you're going, oh my God, that's good. Oh, geez. And you're over there crying with them, but you hit them with a shot of empathy and with pity with what their needs are. And then you try to bring them out a little bit and you have this deep conversation. That's being intentional. That's being a great communicator. That is something that I tell you what, I am fanatical about, and you have to, it's something that we can continue to learn on here. I go into deep levels of this. I'm trained deep levels on psychology of all these things as triggers, and you may not be. It may not be your thing, but understand this right now is that listen to people, what they have going on, and be empathetic with what they have going on, and look at just think, what do they need right now? Not what do I need, and what is, and what my persona is. Because a lot of times we put that persona like, I'm a positive person, so I got to share about my positivity. Like, get you're a positive person. And it doesn't mean you have to lower and sulk and feel bad, but being empathetic is what that client may need at the time. And empathy is key when it comes to these transactions, right? People are stressed. People are going, what's going on? Normally great people that are just are positive are having some pity going on. They're like, oh man, this is bad, and I got to move, and this, and they're feeling bad. Have empathy. I tell you what, it is absolutely going to lead to the heart. Number 4 is fully intently listen. When we hear this all the time, but this is again one of those punchlines. Yeah, we got to listen. Like, listen for little cues. Make it a game, or whatever you got to do to listen a little more intently. Listen to their visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and they'll start piquing your, okay, what are they saying? Are they a visual person? Are they auditory? Are they kinesthetic? Some keys to kind of pick up to where you are forced to actively listen, right? Intently listen. Okay. Number 5, body language is critical. Even if you're not in person, even if you're not on Zoom, body language is key. And so we have to make sure, like, our body language is so instrumental. It will help us communicate better. If we are slouched over and just kind of like laying back in our chair and whatever, we're trying to have this good conversation, guess what? It's not probably going to work as well, right? If somebody is walking, if somebody's like really, you can feel their energy and they're excited, you may want to get up out of your chair and walk around, have body languages. That's the body language of motion and emotion, right? And lifting the spirits. Maybe someone, there's somebody is really on edge and you need to just sit up, but slightly back, because you got to go, okay, I've got to listen a little bit more. I've got to not try to pounce. I'm not going to lean forward because I'm not ready just to speak. I'm intently listening. And when you're in person, this stuff matters. Even if the brain, right? The unconscious mind doesn't speak English, right? So our unconscious mind reads body language, but it doesn't speak English. So we don't know why we get a gut feeling from someone. We don't know if why we get a good or bad gut feeling about someone. We just know we do. So when you show up and your body language is good and it's intentful, it's purposeful, it's engaging, it's helpful, and you have that intent within you and that confidence and composure within you, it matters. It will help you win more relationships, help you communicate better to the nth degree. So that's what I got on communication. We can continue to go deep on that. Those are just the 5 right now that I think that are really things you can implement and grow your communication.